Hello, everybody. I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. It's so great to have you with us and to have as a special springtime guest, Gary Bernard. You may be familiar with Gary from the show he did in January on the Bird Park Community Garden. And that's what we're going to talk about today, getting kind of an update now that it's spring planting season. So welcome, Gary. So good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's nice to join you and be part of this WCTV event.
It's great. And this is the time to be thinking about planting and just getting out there. And my gosh, it's so wonderful to be able to get out in the fresh air. And you have the perfect opportunity for that. And that's the Bird Park Community Garden. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Well, it's just what the name signifies. It's a place where Wadsworth residents and residents of the township can get together and plant a garden, see things grow, and it's everything you would expect to hear and see when you hear the word garden.
Everything except having to dig up your own backyard.
Yeah, and there's some people that can't do that, or perhaps they're apartment dwellers, or they don't want to mess around with their backyard, and so this gives them the opportunity to plant the seeds, watch things grow, and harvest some really good tasting vegetables, particularly.
This will be the second year for the Bird Park Garden. How did it come to be? How did it start?
Yeah, our library director, Daniel Slife, had the same type of occupation in Lakewood, Ohio, and he brought the idea to Wadsworth, and we got a little bit of a late start last year, but it was pretty much his initiative to start a community garden, and so far it's been a lot of fun. We have 6 dedicated people who are on the committee, and we hope to do nothing but expand in the next few years.
Is the garden bigger this year than it was last year?
No, it's the same size. We have not yet decided to expand, but we do have room to expand. But we have 4 rows of 8 10 by 10 plots, and they are, well, let's see, 8 times 4 is 32, less 1. We have a water main running through one of them, so we have 31 10 by 10 plots available.
Well, that gives an opportunity then to that many residents of Wadsworth to be able to plant a garden out there.
Yes, we had a Zoom meeting last night, and all of the plots are spoken for. There are a few people who have not paid the $25 fee for the garden, but hopefully they will. And as it stands right now, it's pretty well spoken for 2021.
Well, that's good to hear. And Jen, definitely then anybody who would want to get involved next year should keep this in mind for a while.
Yes, there may be a few people who have not yet paid that won't, and so it's not too late to try for this year. You can get in contact through the library's webpage and put your name in, and you may be able to secure a plot for this year.
Oh, that would be a nice thing to have. Well, you know, we've been talking about it, and I haven't asked you, where is this park?
Well, let me take you step by step. If you go down South Main Street or Main Street, take a left on East Berge, and you go up about 6 or 8 blocks, and it's the first dedicated street on the right, which is Bird Street, and you'll proceed south. There's a little S curve, and as soon as you see the gigantic water tower down there, you found the garden, because it's right beside. It's in the shadow of the water tower, and that tower has to be 70 feet tall and quite wide. The garden is just to the right of that, or toward the north side of the water tower.
Can you actually see it from the street?
Yes, you can. There's a big silver maple tree adjacent to the tower, but you can see the garden quite readily from Bird Street. It's also that's where the Pee Wee football field is, and there's a baseball field there also, so you can't miss it. In a very large parking lot, a lot of room to park.
Well, tell me how it actually got started. You said that you had someone who had done this in another community,
Yes.
but how did it happen in Wadsworth?
Well, I think that Daniel put out. He started on the website, the library website, asking for volunteers, and being a longtime gardener myself, and there's some other people that I'd like to mention who are on the committee, and it was his idea, and we signed up and got together for a meeting, and it's worked out so far, very well so far. Those other meetings, Tammy Willis, Sandy Papp, Daniel Slife, who I mentioned, Cheryl Kreider, Carolyn Kuiper, David Williams, and myself.
That is a nice sized committee, but that's a lot of work for really not too many people. It's a good sized committee, but it's not overwhelming.
Well, it seems like everyone has their niche in this committee too, as far as administration goes, which is not my strong suit. Organization, we have people, and I should put in a disclaimer here. I am not an expert. I've been gardening for a long time. I may be an expert in my own garden, but we do have Carolyn Kuiper, along with her husband, Kevin, who are real farmers. They have a place out on Mennonite Road, and they raise a lot of produce. And the two of those have helped us a whole lot in this endeavor. Kevin brings his tractor and tiller, and we're going to be tilling again, probably middle May. It depends on the weather a little bit. We don't want it too wet. But everyone has their place in this committee, and it's going very well. We get along just fine.
I think you just answered one of the questions that was in my mind, and that is, do you have to be a good or excuse me, a good or experienced gardener in order to take advantage of this?
On the contrary, we'd like to see a lot of beginners get involved. And one of the aspects of this committee and of the garden itself is to try to get young people involved in gardening. It's important for them to know that food just doesn't come from the grocery store. It has to be grown, and what's better than a tomato about in the middle of August? And it doesn't taste anything like what you get from the grocery store. Well, there's a lot to be learned, and we're going to also, through one of the committee members, get involved with the school system as well. And we're going to have students down there, and anyone that wants information they're going to be able to contact one of the committee members. We talked about this last night in our meeting. I'm going to actually start going down there on specific days or evenings to help out people that may have questions.
Well, that's wonderful to know. And let's see, there were a lot of things that, excuse me, that come to mind because, I'm just the little gardener with a couple tomato plants, something like that. But when you're talking about these plots, I think you said they're 10 by 10.
Correct.
And you have someone that comes and tills them. What about fertilizing and water and all the nitty gritty that goes into having a garden?
Well, I mentioned Kevin Kuiper, who comes and he will be tilling. He did it last year, and we also fertilized. We had a soil analysis done, and the soil down there really is pretty good. We were a little low on one component, and if you know anything about fertilizer, you know that the NPK 3 three components of fertilizer, and we were low in one, but we replenished that. And that one of the requirements will be for the gardeners to use natural fertilizers and ways to get rid of insects and things like that. We want organic gardening done there, nothing artificial.
Organic is very important right now. I think people are trying to eat healthier, staying away from a lot of the chemicals that are in so many processed foods, or even in vegetables and fruits and such that you buy in the grocery store, because they've used others.
Very important. You also asked about water. The city has worked with us very, very well. And we have a very large container. I don't know how many gallons. It has to be several hundred gallons, mounted on like a wooden stage with a hose, so people can fill buckets and take them to their plot and hand water. We don't have a hose that stretches clear to the back. It will reach some of the forward gardens, but not in the back. So we'll see people with like a 5-gallon barrel, and all you do is take like a gallon milk jug, cut the top off, and you can water from that. And I know I did. I had 4 plots down there with wildflowers in last year. Now we've had enough applicants that the wildflowers aren't going to be there this year, because it's more important that people actually have their own garden plot. So we will sacrifice those this year so people can grow their food to take home.
You said that you've always been something of a gardener, but not professionally or anything like that. What are your earliest memories of gardening?
It goes back into the 40s, believe it or not. My father was in optometry school in Chicago right after the war, from 45 to 48. And somehow or another, I acquired some bean seeds. And I planted those bean seeds by a garage. And lo and behold, they grew very well. And that's my first recollection. And then my 2 grandfathers, my grandfather Bernard, who was also an optometrist, and my grandfather John Leaf, who lived out on Seville Road, they both had gardens, and they were quite proficient in what they grew. And my grandfather Bernard lived on North Pardee Street, and I remember going out to his garden and helping him at times. Then I have a garden here at my home on Longview. I have 9 4x8 raised beds that I've been growing things for probably close to 40 years in those plots on the back of my property.
So you have a lot of expertise, even if you don't consider yourself an expert. You certainly have a lot of expertise that you can share with people.
Well, I've learned by my mistakes, and when you garden, you make errors and you learn by them, and hopefully the next year things turn out better. And
Would it embarrass you if I asked you what some of those mistakes were?
No, it wouldn't embarrass me at all. One thing I've learned particularly is about root vegetables. For instance, beets, carrots, radishes, things that actually grow underneath the ground. At first, I was not having any luck with those at all. And I found out that I had to amend my soil a lot better than I had been doing. So now those vegetables are much better coming out of my garden than they used to be. And another thing, I grow my tomatoes up gas pipe. I have 8 to 10 foot gas pipe that I drive in the ground, and I grow my tomatoes up there. 2 years ago, I had one called a chocolate cherry. At the end of the year, I thought, oh, this thing is really growing well. So I laid it out in my yard, and it was 14 feet long and producing clear up at the end of the plant.
Now, when you say a gas pipe, we're not talking about a pipe the gas is actually going through. What are you talking about?
These are old, rusty old pipes that I've cut down or I've gathered from a plumber friend of mine. Um, they're quite old and they've been used for years and years and years, but it works really well.
So could somebody go to like a home improvement store, like a Home Depot or Lowe's or something, and pick up like one of those long white PVC poles?
I tried PVC last year, but it has to be so heavy to support the vines that it probably worked, but metal works better.
They have to have something to cling to.
Yes, and but I tie mine up with jute twine and I'm very careful about suckering the tomato plants. And so the nutrients is going to the fruit, not to the green part of the plant. Another thing that I should probably mention that I've learned a lot about is composting. Uh, very, very important part of gardening is to replenish the soil that that the plants have taken out of the soil. You have to put it back. And I have one of my squares dedicated to a compost pile right now.
Well, what about at the Bird Park garden? Do people have to bring their own compost?
No, no. We have, let me refer to one of my notes. Last August, we had a young man by the name of Amari Sutton, who was from Barberton. And as an Eagle Scout project, he and some of his fellow scouts built a 3-bin composter, which is now in use. It's nice to join you. And you put plot number 1, when you first get it, you cut it up as best you can in bouquets, and then you move it to 2, and then to 3, and you help along with maybe some calcium or compost starter. So we have some. There won't be any available this year because someone emptied bin number 3 for their complete plot, which we were a little concerned about, but there will be compost available, maybe not this year, but certainly next year.
What could people do in the meantime who are planting the gardens there?
Well, you can compost at home. For example, underneath my kitchen sink, I have a gallon bucket. It's a milk jug, really. And we put in our coffee grounds, banana peels. This morning we had banana, blueberries, and strawberries in a smoothie. And all those products go in there. And I compost grass and leaves. I was on a website in a Zoom meeting by Ohio State Extension, and this man was talking about oak trees, and we shouldn't be shoveling all our leaves out to the berm. We should be composting those leaves or leaving them in our flower beds because they have a lot of nutrients. They break down, and I've discovered that I should be leaving the leaves 6 or 7 inches deep in my flower beds. So you can learn a lot if you can read, and there's a lot of information on the internet as well on gardening.
Oh, now that's very interesting because I always thought you're supposed to get the leaves away from your gardens so that there won't be any leaf mold or anything like that. But you say it's really good, particularly oak leaves?
Well, not oak leaves are kind of waxy and they break down slower than some of the other leaves. But I have a tulip tree in my yard, and my neighbor has a red maple that comes down, and all those are in my compost pile right now. But yeah, you don't need to rake the oak leaves. They just take a little longer to break down.
So when you're composting at home, and for people, because many of the people that are viewing probably will have their own little gardens at home, especially if they need to get on a waiting list for a plot at Bird Park or think about next year for Bird Park. So people who are composting at home, you've mentioned 2 kinds of composting. You said that you have an milk jug, an empty cleaned out milk jug under your sink, but you also mentioned grass clippings and leaves. I'm assuming that that's an outside composting as well?
Well, perhaps I make myself clear about the milk jug that I have. When it gets full, I take it out to the compost pile, dump it in, and put some leaves over it, and it decomposes, especially when it's starting to get warmer, quite rapidly. A good composting pile will reach an internal temperature of 125 to 130 degrees. I mean, it gets quite warm. There's almost no bad way of composting. I mean, you can do it in a garbage can, you can do it in a plastic bag, you can just do it on the back of your yard where you layer it. It should be damp, not wet, but just damp. And it really, right now, and as cold as it's been, I'll turn my compost pile and I have worms in the bottom of them. They aren't very active, but they're there. So another important thing about composting is when you talk about your grass, you do not want to compost your grass that has been treated by a yard company, or when you put chemicals on it. You do not want that in your compost, or you don't want meat products. There's an old adage about composting that says, if it grows, it goes. With maybe one exception, you shouldn't probably put black walnut leaves in your compost. They have an acid in it that prevents good growth.
Well, I don't think we have too many black walnut trees around here. I think they're on the scarce side.
That's good. I have one that is less than 20 feet from my garden.
But you're careful not to include those in your compost pile. Well, it doesn't sound too hard, but I'm thinking that you do need to turn that compost.
Yes, you do. You want to layer it with leaves, and you can use all kinds of stuff that grows. And sometimes we get too much carbon in there, and you can use a little bit of, I use pelletized lime on the compost pile, and also in my garden. I'll just take some of it and put it in a jug, put some water, shake it up, dissolve it, and for one thing, I poured on my tomato plants, and I've never had blossom end rot on the tomatoes.
Oh, that's something I'm going to have to think about, because I sure did get it last year.
Yeah, you get calcium in there, and you will not have blossom end rot. Another thing, eggshells. Take the carton that your eggshells come in. Don't throw it away. When you break an egg, rinse it out, put it in that egg carton, and grind it up with your hands. Another thing you do with eggs, put them in your blender. Put those shells in your blender with some water, blend up real good, and it makes a good slurry that you can use. Put it in the compost pile, or you can actually put it on your garden itself.
Oh, you're giving us some really good hints. And I imagine that people come to you at the garden and such when you're there and ask you for your advice. But I'm going to go back to composting a little bit. One of the advantages of the bird park garden would be that the composting bins are right there.
It is right.
And do the gardeners have to go and do that shifting from bin to bin? Or
no, I've been doing, as a matter of fact, if I can check my notes here, just meant we are going to have a composting seminar. David Williams, who's one of the committee members. Oh yeah, here it is. Here we go. On April the 24th at 2:00 in the afternoon, that's a Saturday afternoon, we're going to be on site in the garden and doing a seminar on composting. If there is inclement weather, rain or such, we do have a rain date for May 1st, which is exactly a week after that at 2:00 in the afternoon. We were supposed to have a meeting at the park tomorrow evening to show some of the things that will help people along. And that was to be at 7 to 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, but it sounds like we're going to have some bad weather tomorrow, so we do have a rain date for that also on March the 30th.
Is that information on the library website?
It will be, yes, and we also are having a little newsletter that will go out. I'm not sure about the interval, but it will go out to all of the gardeners who have paid their $25 fee. They're going to get that newsletter via email. We just talked about that last night as well.
What kind of things are going to be in the newsletter?
Different information about rules and regulations concerning, like we talked before, especially about fertilizer, insect control. One other thing I'll mention that we had some animal difficulties at the park last year, mainly deer. And you think, where did those deer come from at Bird Street? Well, they're all around. And I was down at the park 2 days ago, and you could tell the deer had been there because of their droppings were all over the ground cover that we have between we have aisles between that people can walk on and access. And I could tell that there have been quite a few deer there. And we're also going to show how to prevent the animals from getting in there. Raccoons, rabbits, deer. We do have a system of netting that we're going to experiment with. I use it in my own garden for blueberries and strawberries so the animals don't get them, but it's another thing we're going to try to do. Fencing is another rule that we want the people to abide by. And it's easy to grow things vertically, but they may shade someone else's, so there is a 6-foot limit on plantings and shading. And also animals. If you take a dog down there, we'd like to have it on a leash, and certainly to clean up after your dog if necessary.
Well, the rules don't seem to be all that restrictive. I mean, basically what we've said is all organic, no herbicides, no pesticides, be considerate of the other gardeners there. Is that about it?
Pretty much, just common sense and being nice to each other. There are insecticidal soaps that you can use that are organic. Sometimes it's as easy as reaching in and grabbing an insect, a bug, or a worm off your tomato plant just with your fingers. And then you drop them in something like water, or you can squish them. You can control a lot of insects quite environmentally friendly.
This is really an opportunity to get close to the earth.
I think that's really important. Plus, it's good exercise. You kind of have to get down on your hands and knees. And I'm in my 80s, and I still can get down on my knees and do what I have to do. And we hope that the people that are going to be planting in the garden take advantage of all the things that are available to them.
Well, Gary, I thank you so much. We've actually come to the end of our time for today, but I wish you all the best with this garden this year and in all the years in the future. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for viewing our show today. I hope you've learned a lot. I certainly have. And I hope that if the opportunity opens up for you to take advantage of a plot at the Bird Park Community Garden, you will. So everyone, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.